Nice to see you. Well, missed you Tuesday. I was in the room like next door. They fed us well during interviews, so I don't mind. I'll do interviews all week if you give me lunch every day. They gave us a menu and they're like, what do you want? And had all these cookies at the bottom. And I was like, can I request like multiple cookies? And they gave me cookies, all the ones I asked for. So I had like 15 cookies this week. It was been a good week. So anyway, I hope everyone's doing well. I hope you were able to do the little assignment and watch the lecture and everything that I gave you on Canvas. I'll be grading those probably later today or tomorrow and over the weekend. So you'll see that updated. And our plan for today, we'll just keep going with this chapter, trying to kind of get through the rest of the personality disorders. And I have that we covered antisocial, but not borderline. Is that where you're at as well? Okay, great. Thank you. So we have gone through, just to go back really quickly, we covered the odd personality disorders, right? So paranoid, schizoid, and schizotypal. And then we started the dramatic ones with antisocial. There are a few more dramatic ones, which we'll get through today. So we'll start with borderline personality disorder, which we often abbreviate as BPD, borderline personality. So antisocial is probably most dangerous to others. Borderline, we could say, is probably most dangerous to self. There's a lot of kind of dangerous, suicidal, self-harming behaviors that can come with this disorder. Not always, but there's a lot of like impulsivity and other elements. So let me write some things up here. We can write, there's a lot of feelings of emptiness, impulsivity, and instability. I'll explain these things a little more in a second. Reactivity of mood. And then one more thing I could write up here. Let's see, suicidality or suicidal gestures are relatively common. Borderline personality disorder is probably one of the more stigmatized of all of the personality disorders. It's one that a lot of therapists don't like to work with. It's has a lot of stigma and like negativity attached to it. This can be a difficult individual to be friends with, to have a relationship with. Obviously, it depends on the person and how severe it is for them. But there's a lot of changes and instability in mood and identity in relationships. Oftentimes, this individual will kind of change very quickly on what they're interested in or not interested in. They have a lot of feelings of chronic emptiness, feeling very lonely and empty. At the heart of this disorder, it's traditionally caused by some kind of abandonment as a child, right? Whether that is a loss of a family member, a death, a divorce, attachment-related issues. And so you see a lot of like push and pull with other people. And there's a very famous book that was written for this disorder called I Hate You, Don't Leave Me. And that kind of sums up this disorder really well. It's a lot of like, I love you. You're everything I could have ever wanted. It hurts to be around you because you're so perfect for me. And then like the next minute something small happens. I hate you. How are we ever together? I don't want anything to do with you. And that person leaves because you just said nasty stuff to them. And then it's a panic and freak out of, I didn't mean it. I love you. You're everything I wanted. Please come back. Don't leave me. That's a very common pattern you see with this disorder of a lot of reactivity of mood. What that means is people who have this disorder, their mood tends to flip very quickly and very intensely. It has a lot in common with bipolar disorder. They're very commonly confused, but this is much more global. And it tends to be a lot of that like push and pull. And so you see a lot of that, a lot of like suicidal gestures, self-harming behaviors are very common with this disorder, like cutting or maybe abusing substances. It can be, as I said, a kind of difficult disorder to navigate. A lot of whiplash from like mood swings, right? The mood swings are very intense with this disorder. And again, behind a lot of it is like a fear of abandonment, right? And so it's I'll push you away before you can leave me, but I don't really want you to go away, so please come back, right? It can be a very kind of intense back and forth. And there's a very specific type of therapy that was invented for this disorder. So I put it under here, and we'll talk about general treatments probably next time. But dialectical behavioral therapy, or DBT, is very common for borderline personality disorder. So you can have DBT for BPD, right? There's so many acronyms, it's ridiculous. But it combines a bunch of techniques to get people to respond more effectively. So rather than overreacting and having this reactivity of mood, how can we get you to maybe step back and look at the facts and evaluate the situation differently so that you don't react in such a strong way? So there is a very specific type of therapy for this disorder. But again, a lot of changes in identity, in a lot of impulsiveness, reckless behavior. And this is something that, again, you would try not to diagnose until someone is 18. But because most of the time we have a lot of instability in image and identity as a teenager anyway. So we typically want to wait until people are a little bit older. Anyone, any stories or questions or thoughts? Anyone know someone with this disorder or anything related to this at all? Again, very commonly confused with bipolar disorder. Was that a hand? Yeah, what's it?
Oh, I was just saying.
You know someone? Any comments or thoughts or anything? Yeah.
Up and down.
Yeah, it's a lot of up and down, right? And it can require a lot of patience as a friend, as a partner, as a family member, especially if it's severe, right? Obviously, anything's on a spectrum, but if it's severe, this can be a difficult one to be patient with. Histrionic and narcissistic are two other ones. These have a lot in common. Histrionic, we'll talk about first. So if you look at the word histrionic, it's a lot like hysteria, right? This person has a lot of dramatic features, right? And I put up here like needing to be the center of attention. That is very much the essence of someone who is a histrionic, who has histrionic personality disorder. There's a lot of shallow emotionality. A lot of emotionality, but it's on the surface. So very dramatic, very emotional, but it's not deep. It's maybe not even genuine or authentic. It's just a lot of like shallow emotions, very, very dramatic. Suggestible. And we can even add like seductive behavior. So I've talked about my mother-in-law a few times. My mother-in-law is like the sweetest woman in the world, worst cook in the world. Like, again, has food poisoned me so many times in my life. She made dinner last night, but I wasn't there for it. I was so grateful. She made meatloaf. And I'm like, all my kids were like, I'm scared to eat it. I'm like, as you should be, children, as you should be, right? None of them got sick, but I was so glad I missed it. But my mother-in-law is so histrionic, right? She will take an hour to tell the dramatic tale of stopping at a stop sign, right? Like take an hour to get that story out. And it's just like everything is such a massive deal. A lot of that like very shallow emotionality. And she has this like seductive piece. It's actually quite comical. Everywhere we go, she has to flirt with everyone, right? It's like she has to prove that they could be interested in her. And that's a very common trait with this disorder. And so every restaurant we go out to, she flirts with the waiter or waitress. Doesn't matter their age. She's in her like mid 60s. Doesn't matter, right? They could be 18, 15, 20. Doesn't matter. She'll flirt, male, female. She'll flirt with them and try and get their attention. It's a lot of this kind of on a milder form, but this person tends to be showing this pattern of I have to be the center of attention. I want all eyes on me. I want everyone hanging on my every word. Everything is like a big dramatic deal. And again, lots of sweeping emotions, but they tend to be very shallow and fleeting, right? 1 minute feeling one way, and the next minute it can be gone and kind of feeling something else. Oftentimes thinking relationships are closer or deeper than they actually are. And they have a lot of, again, I would say those shallow emotions are a very big hallmark and needing to be in the spotlight and the center of attention. Very similar, but a little different. And I always spell this wrong. There's too many S's in there. Narcissistic, there we go. Narcissistic personality disorder is like its close cousin, right? They're very closely related. The big difference here is this person tends to have a huge ego, right? I have a person here with a big head that is very typical of this disorder, right? With narcissistic disorder, there's a lot of grandiosity. I am grand and important and everything that I should be and perfect, right? It's a very common element of this disorder. A lot of entitlement, so entitled, arrogant, and requires a lot of admiration. This individual likes to be looked up to, thinks that they're perfect and beautiful and successful and only want to be around other perfect, beautiful and successful people. I don't want to hear about your day. Your day is so boring. I want to tell you about mine. I'm the more important one. But like everything is kind of back to like, I am big and important and I have all this self-esteem, might be very fueled by having very little self-esteem, actually, on like an inward level. It could be kind of like a compensation for feeling very inferior. But this individual oftentimes shows a lack of empathy. I don't care about your lowly life and situation, right? Only mine. I'm the only one that matters. Again, that big head, constant need for admiration, very arrogant, very entitled, but great example of this for you in a second. Yeah.
Do these people with this personality disorder usually have like kind of internally less confidence?
They might. They might.
Than like your average person.
They might. So Adler, who's a very famous psychologist, right? He studied under Freud and Carl Jung and so on. Adler talked about something called an inferiority complex. Somebody who feels deeply inferior, like I'm less than everyone else. And so because they feel inferior, they project and act superior, right? So it's almost like that idea of you're compensating for something. So someone who has this might feel incredibly inferior, but they are almost not aware of it to the point where they project that superiority. Or it could be that they genuinely feel that they're that beautiful and important and grand. And so it can kind of go either way. It could come from a childhood where they were made to feel very important and the center of the world. Or it could come from a childhood where they got very little attention, it felt inferior, and now they project in the opposite way. Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah.
In my life, like several times, typically like shorter people, almost like
Feeling very grand and important, that lack of empathy, like, I don't care what your dreams are, they're the same as mine. Of course they are, right? It's very, very common, this disorder. So I think he's a great example of that. There's some elements in common here with antisocial personality disorder, right? Sometimes they can kind of blend a little, especially that lack of empathy piece is one that you sometimes see. But again, this person doesn't tend to be violent or criminal. They just are very entitled and arrogant, right? That tends to be a big difference. Yeah.
That I don't know if the amount of narcissism is not or empathy, but feeling brags about how good he is at manipulating people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he like tries to like teach other people how to do this.
Is there any, like, does he feel bad about doing it in any way? Because that lack of remorse is like a hallmark of antisocial, right? And the manipulating and lying and I would tend to lean that way, right? Knowing it's little, like not knowing a whole lot more, but yeah, they're very commonly confused, right? Because they have a lot of that, like, I'm important and I don't care about your perspective. But one tends to be more like manipulative and lying and cheating and no guilt. The no guilt is the big one, versus the other is just entitled and arrogant, right? So that's the biggest difference, but they overlap a lot. Sometimes it's hard to tell, right? Without like having a full picture. Okay, last three, these are the anxious ones. So these are dominated by anxiety, right? People who have a lot of like anxious tendencies, fearful behaviors. And a lot of overlap in this one as well, which is again a big criticism of these, that within clusters, they can look very similar at times. But avoidant personality disorder is the first one. This is someone who has a lot of discomfort and restraint in social situations. It's like a very broad, almost social phobia in some ways. A lot of feelings of inadequacy, a lot of sensitivity to negative evaluation. This person tends to have a very hard time with feeling inferior. So that's something we can put up here. They feel inferior. Like they're not good enough. Like they're not as good as the people around them. Other things we could say, they're very reluctant to take risks. And the reason for that is they don't want to be embarrassed. So they don't want to have any kind of embarrassment whatsoever. So they don't want to take risks because risks could lead to failure, could lead to being embarrassed. Very uncomfortable in social situations. You could say discomfort socially. So this person wants to be around other people, right? They want close relationships and can be intensely lonely. but they are afraid to have close relationships because they might be embarrassed, they might not be good enough, someone might leave them, right? So there's a lot of like hypersensitivity to anything negative. Like let's say you get a haircut and they're like, oh, I noticed you got a haircut, right? But there's no like, I like it or don't like it. It's like, I would obsess about that, right? Well, did you say that because you don't like my haircut? Is it not good enough? Like, does my hair look bad? Like, it's just like, everything is very hypersensitive, right? And again, constant fear of embarrassment, avoiding other people because of that, but wanting to be with other people. So oftentimes being intensely lonely. But think of avoidant, they avoid social connections because it makes them feel very inferior and vulnerable. Dependent personality. Dependent personality disorder has a lot of clinging and obedience. Clinging, obedience. There's a fear of separation. Oftentimes, this individual has a desperate need to be taken care of. They do not like to be alone. We could add that they're helpless when alone. Right? They will oftentimes find an individual to cling to for dear life, right? They are dependent on that other person. It could be one person, it could change over time, but they're dependent on them. I can't make a decision. You're going to make it for me. I don't know what to wear this morning, so I'm going to call you and have you tell me what to wear. What are you majoring in? I'll just go ahead and take that because I don't know what I want to do, right? Needing help with like the smallest of decisions, oftentimes not able to make decisions on their own. They might go to excessive lengths to gain like nurturing and support and closeness to other people and feel very uncomfortable and helpless when they're by themselves, right? So that clinging, they're very also submissive. I'm not going to do anything to upset you because then you might leave me or you might not like me anymore, not want me around, right? So there's a lot of clinging and dependence. They are dependent, hence the name, on another individual. And I have a great example of this. And if any of you plan to be a therapist in any capacity, you have to watch this movie at some point. It's called What About Bob? It's an older movie. It's a great example of probably some of the worst therapeutic boundaries of all time. This individual, Bob, who you'll see in a moment, he has dependent personality disorder and he becomes dependent on his therapist. That is super common. I had a client once who did this. He called me 38 times in a day, found my other job, came and stalked me, showed up there and would wait for me to get off work so he could ask me questions. This is not an uncommon thing to find, that a client will become dependent on their therapist. But then if you add that they have this disorder, it gets very intense. This guy, Bob, stalks his therapist, makes him go mad, marries his sister. I mean, it's just probably the worst example of therapeutic boundaries and a pretty comical movie. So let me play just a little clip from his therapist to have a psychotic break and then marries his sister. And it's quite a movie. But you can see his dependence on him, right? He hunts him down. He kind of tracks him down and finds him on vacation and then shows up to his house and kind of won't go away. He's incredibly dependent on his therapist. Now, this can be a partner, it can be a friend, it can be a family member, but you have that fear of separation and that really intense need to be taken care of and to have help with even the smallest of decisions. Very, very common with this disorder. And then one more, this one's my favorite. If you can have a favorite personality disorder, this one's my favorite. And the reason it's my favorite is because for some reason, I seem to be like drawn to this disorder. I have a lot of people in my life who have OCPD. And so it's probably my favorite disorder of all of them. But you've heard of obsessive compulsive disorder. We talked about that previously. This is a little bit different. They're commonly confused. And it's probably one of my little like pet peeves with like disorders, right? People will say that's so OCD of you when it's maybe a little bit more OCPD. So with obsessive compulsive disorder, this is somebody who needs to have everything be just so. Everything has to be perfect. So we can add perfection, order, and control. Right, our huge focuses of this disorder. Everything has to be perfect. Everything has to be under control. Everything has to be a certain way. I have to have order, right, in what I'm doing. It's like an extreme amount of efficiency. There's oftentimes a lot of inflexibility. So someone is very inflexible. and rigid, we could add. Sometimes stubborn, doesn't always have to be. But with this disorder, somebody is just obsessed with efficiency. Everything has to be perfect and just so. If you open the cabinet in someone's kitchen who has this disorder, it is likely that everything is organized perfectly. Everything is clustered together, labels face forward, everything perfect. If you were to move it in any way, they would know. Someone who has this disorder would have a very hard time with everything not being lined up and perfect and as it should be, right? And I, for some reason, like I said, have been really, I've had a lot of this in my life. Like both of the people that I have had long-term relationships with had OCPD. My in-laws, my father-in-law has OCPD. I think after all these years of being surrounded by this, I might have a little bit of OCPD at this point. But let me tell you a story, and I think it kind of gets at this disorder really well. Little weird to think about because it's so long ago at this point, but before my current partner, my first partner that I ever had that I had like a long-term relationship with, we had been together maybe like 6 months or so, 6 or 7 months, and we were going to Disneyland together, right? I love Disneyland, right? I went not that long ago. Though I've learned I get sick at Disneyland now. I didn't used to, but Disneyland, right? So we're in the car, we're driving there, and we're talking about, what do you like to do? What do you like to do? Kind of like planning the day, it's our first trip there together. And I'm really flexible at Disneyland as long as I get my churros, right? Like if I get churros, I'll do pretty much anything else. Like, so as long as there are churro stops built in and food stops built in, kind of all I really care about, right? And the person I was going with, like, we get out of the car, we get on like the Mickey and Friends tram and we're going to the park, and she starts coming up with a plan, right? I'm a planner, I don't mind plans. Plans are good, right? She's like, so when we get in the park, we're gonna head straight over to Splash Mountain. We'll ride that first because the line gets long and it's cold right now, so no one will want to ride it. Like me either, but okay. We'll go there and then we'll do this. And we'll get a fast pass for this, and we'll go here, and then we'll go here, and then we'll go here, and then we'll go here. Like step by step, the whole day mapped out. And I was like, and the churros, right? Like where are the churro stops? And she's like, oh, there's one over here, so we can stop there and get. So this whole plan. And again, nothing wrong with having a plan. It's good to have a plan in life. But we walk in the park and Splash Mountain was closed. The first thing on her list was closed, and it ruined the entire day for her. And that is very much the essence of this disorder. Her plan could no longer work, right? There's no flexibility. So for me, right, I like to think of myself as a pretty like patient and understanding like person, right, for the most part. I was like, not a big deal. We'll just skip item 1. We'll skip Splash Mountain. We don't have to get wet, which is good. And we'll just move to item 2 and keep going with the day. No worries. Okay. Not at all an issue for me. It ruined her entire day, right? Again, she could not let it go. And I finally got her to let it go enough that we went on like the next ride. But the entire time we were on the Haunted Mansion, which was the next ride, it was like her planning the rest of the day. I'm like, hold on, let's enjoy the ride. And then we can the day, right? But she couldn't let it go. And that's kind of the essence of this disorder is you have a plan and you can't adapt, you can't change, you can't be flexible. And really interesting because when we went this last time, we were in the car and we were on the tram and I was like, okay, so when we go in the park, let's do this and then this and then this and then this. And I was like, wait, stop, don't do that. But again, for me, if something is closed or doesn't work out, I can kind of change it up and be like, that's okay, we'll skip it and move on. Someone with this disorder can't. So we were together a few years, right? Again, I'm patient, right? I hung in there with it. And then I met my current partner. We've been together 19, almost 20 years at this point. Yeah, right? She put up with me for a long time. And vice versa, I suppose. But the first time I came to her house, she's like, okay, if I could ask you a favor, please don't sit on the couch. I was like, why not? What's wrong with the couch? And she's like, I like the pillows to be a certain way. I was like, oh God, here we go again, right? Like, why am I drawn and attracted to like these individuals? And so I never sat on the couch. Like literally, she'd be at work and I would sit on the floor so I didn't mess up the couch because I'm thoughtful like that, right? I don't want to mess it up. She'd be like, if you eat something, like make sure that when you wash the dishes, you put them away this way. If you put my clothes away, make sure that they had to be 1 inch apart in the closet, everything color coordinated. She's like, never mind, just don't put my clothes away. I'll do it. Right. And again, like, I don't mind. I was like, okay, just tell me the things you don't want me to do and I won't do them. Like, that's just who I am as a person. But like, had incredibly intense OCPD and it came from her dad. My father-in-law has this so badly, and it's so easy to piss him off, which is amazing, right? His thing as well is he can't stand when his couch pillows get messed up, which is clearly where my partner got it from. So when I'm mad at him, I just go in his house and like do that to his couch pillows, and it's amazing because you can see him like twitching. It drives him nuts, and it just to his couch pillows constantly. I'll fix that just in case that drives him nuts. Because it me a little bit, right? But this is so true of this disorder, right? Everything has to be just so, has to be perfect. And the hilarious thing at this point is after almost 20 years, plus 3 before, plus a father-in-law who has this, right? I am this way now. Like I have become OCPD and my partner has mellowed incredibly. She doesn't care where her clothes go anymore. She doesn't care about the couch cushions anymore. Like she fixes them a lot, but she doesn't care. Versus now I'm like, okay, my clothes have to be in a certain order. I like my cups to be a certain way. Like I've developed all these little OCPD tendencies from being with people with OCPD for all these years. Kind of funny how like when you're surrounded by someone with a disorder, sometimes you can pick up on those little tendencies. Yeah.
Would you say that it's more of a pure disorder than a nature? Like, I don't know if there'd be any like genetic.
Yeah, there's not a lot of genetic pieces to this one. Like, yeah, I think it's much more nurture driven, right? Like, so oftentimes if you grew up with somebody who has this disorder, you know, you might inherit some of those tendencies. And I feel so bad because I have like 3 little OCD children like on the way, right? Like they're not coming, but I mean like they're developing into it. And the 3 more children that I couldn't do it, and it was all my hair. But my daughter is so like this. My daughter Kaya, like I'll go to put a book away and I can see her twitching. Like that's not where it goes, right? Like, and the second I leave, she'll go over and fix it. Like everything, my daughter Emma, everything has to be meticulously perfect, right? And I'm so bad with this. Like, if you were to take like a piece of my paper, and I'll do this just to push myself, but like, if anyone in here, like, you take notes and they have to be perfect, right? Like my partner will come up and we'll do this to my paper, and I have to like throw it away because it drives me so bananas, right? Like that's going to drive me nuts forever, but it's good for me, right? So I'll leave it, but or I'll reprint it later, one or the other. But it's still like everything has to be that way, and it's very common for children to pick up on those tendencies from their parents. Mine are definitely between their 2, you know, one very OCPD and one a little bit like, and I'm not sure which one of us is which at this point. They are definitely developing a little bit of this disorder. Yeah.
What would be the main differences?
Yeah, that's a great question. So with OCD, people have anxiety and then they perform a ritual to make the anxiety go away. Right. So I'm anxious about getting sick and contaminated. So I'm going to wash my hands a certain number of times to avoid getting sick. Right. Or I feel like I have to check the door 5 times to make sure it's not locked. So there's anxiety, which drives like an obsessive kind of compulsive behavior to make the anxiety go away. With this one, the biggest thing is it's all about perfection. So everything has to be just perfect and just so. But there is that like obsessive thinking behind it, which is why I got the name. But there's a lot of overlap. But one is more like anxiety, so you do rituals to prevent it. Versus this one, everything has to be perfect and you can't adapt and be flexible. So some similarities, but a little bit different. Other questions or thoughts or anything here? Yeah. Did you say avoid it? Yeah. Oh. Not usually, right? So that person, remember, has that discomfort socially. So oftentimes they struggle intensely in relationships, feeling like they're not good enough. It can a little bit be that way.
So in the cases that personality might be not as intense, where they sustain the romantic relationship, the kind of codependency might be.
Yeah, the codependency is much more here. Right. So this person is going to be a very intense partner, right? They're going to cling for dear life. I can't do anything without you. I don't want to ever not be with you. Like incredible, like FOMO, right? Like fear of missing out, like with everything. Like I can't not be with you.
Yeah, it's like being accepting the general social, like sort of
Yeah.
friends, classmates, colleagues,
Mhm.
for just one relationship.
It might be. It can happen that way. And like, so sometimes people can learn to And even with people who have antisocial personality disorder, they might still have like a meaningful relationship or two. And so sometimes an individual can kind of push past that, but in general, they're going to be very uncomfortable socially with that fear of being inadequate. But they might have one or two people that they've gotten past that with, especially maybe a family member or a partner or a friend that they trust. But there's always that underlying like doubt and fear behind it. So I have a little activity that we'll do for the little bit here. I have found this thing. Imagine a party where everybody at the party had a personality disorder. And I would love to go to this party because it would be so wildly interesting to do. But there are 8 different people at this party. Each one has a personality disorder. And on the back, it has their names. So what I want you to do is get into groups of like 2 or 3 people. And I'm going to give you maybe about like 10 minutes or so. What I want you to do is go through and figure out which personality disorder each one of these people has. I also want you to write your names on here, first and last name, because it's going to be worth points in an activity. And then we'll talk about it and I'll collect it. None of them are used more than once. And there are 2 that are not used at all. Okay, so there's 8 people, so only 8 of the 10 are used. So make your best guess. There's definitely a best answer for each of them. So get into a group of like 2 or 3, send somebody up to grab one. I have enough if you want to grab a couple, so you each can look at your own, but you only need to turn in one as a group, put all of your names on there, and that's what you will turn in. So let's try and take maybe about 10 minutes and then we can talk about it together.
Yeah.
And again, I have plenty. If you want to take more than one, that's totally fine. Yeah, if you copy some, it's probably easier that way. Yeah, only one per group. So just write all of your names on one of them, first and last name. So let's shoot for about 9:20, so about 10 minutes or so as a group, trying to answer them all, and then we'll talk about it together. Close this.
You have to explain why.
No, you just have to write the disorder.